All right, you're on.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today's daf is Nun Zayin and Ches. Nun Zayin was on Shabbos, Nun Ches is today. So we start with the new parak of Bama Isha Yotza. So top of Nun Zayin Amar Aleph. We'll start literally top line is the Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, Bama Isha Yotza, Bama Ena Yotza. So with what? Now, as we discussed in the previous parak, obviously there's going to be different rules and qualifications with what a woman can go out with and what a animal. Obviously, a person is allowed to go outside and wear clothing, but however, we don't want people to walk outside with things that they're going to take off to show people, because then if they would take off this item, perhaps they're going to go ahead and come carry it. Or if it's something which is very valuable, perhaps they'll go ahead. If it falls off, they'll have to carry it. So there's different reasons as to why a person might go ahead and carry it, and then and therefore we don't want a person to do that in Rishus Rabim. So therefore we have different rules. So Mishnah starts off with what can a woman go out with, what can she not go out with. Now, Eina Yaitza. So Isha. So he says, so Isha Yaitza, Eina Yaitza. Lo Taitza Isha, lo bechute tzemer, lo bechute pishtan, lo bertzus shabarosha. So the first rule is that a woman should not go out with. Sorry, it's just allergy season. A woman should not go out with threads of linen in her hair, or wool, right, or different straps, right, that basically are holding her hair together. And those things, she should not go ahead and wear them out. Why? Now we'll soon see why. What the reasons? She should not go ahead and go to the mikvah. And a woman, let's say, has to go to the mikvah, so she cannot go ahead with those in her hair. Rather, she has to remove them. So these items, they are tightly secure in her hair. And despite the fact that they're tightly secure in her hair, we'll see why that a woman cannot wear it. Obviously, a woman can go out and wear her clothing in public, wear something that's fastened to her. So why these things specifically, we'll soon see, but related to that item. And also, a woman cannot go out with totefes velo sarvitin. She can't go out with a totefes or savitin. This is different things that are worn on a woman, either across her temple, right? The Gemara will explain, or the things that go. It's like sort of like a headband with things that hang from it. Bisman she'ein tifruda, when they are not gone ahead and sewn into her hat. Now, if it's sewn into her hat, it's not going to fall off. And also, now remember, a woman will not remove or uncover her hair in public. So if a woman is, therefore, let's say it's a hat or something like that, so therefore that's an item which is not likely to be removed in public. And therefore there is no issue of a woman wearing that in public, because it's not something that will be taken off. Now, next, it goes a line, below bikvul reshus harabim. So the Gemara will discuss this case. A kvul is like a hat which is worn, was seen by who? In the reshus harabim. So as pointed out by Rashi and then the Gemara later on, that this is something that cannot be worn into the Rishus Harabim, but it sounds like it could be, this is no other issue with all other areas, right? Rashi says, Rishus Harabim, v'lechatzer shari, right? But to a chatzer, they would be permitted to wear. Right? And everything mentioned earlier is even to be forbidden to be worn into the chatzer, shema, targilim, Rishus Harabim. Right? And perhaps they'll, be accustomed to it. Then they'll go ahead and continue to Rishus Harabim. So this is one gzeira that it was geyser on them. So since you can't go ahead and Rishus Harabim, you can't go ahead and even wear it privately. However, this is different. We'll soon see why the klul is different. That it can be worn in a chutzir, but as opposed to the others. Fine. So back in the Mishnah says, and also now the Ir Shalzav, that's also a type of ornament that's it's worn, right? That's resembles a city of Yerushalayim. Velo bekatla, and also now with the katla and also different types of jewelry, which the Gemara will explain. They are nose rings, right? Velo betabas, and also now with a ring she'ein la chaysem, a ring that does not have a chaysem, a signet. Velo b'mechet she'ein a nekuva. Also not with a mechet, a needle, right, that doesn't have a functioning hole in it, right, that's usable. So despite the fact that these things might be worn as an ornament, right, or tachshitim, which is okay, the issue is that perhaps will be taken off to be shown, and therefore an issue of carrying Daled Amos Rishus Harabim. But these things, as he said, if a woman is wearing them, despite the fact that she wore it out, and then wore it back. So even though we say it's usher, but obviously one is not chayv chatas because you are allowed to wear tachshitin, and therefore the only reason for it to be usher was because of the gzeira that you might come to carry it. But if you don't carry it in your hand, but it's just attached to, let's say, a pin, right, a brooch or something that's attached to your garment, the fact that you weren't allowed to do it, nevertheless, you're not chayv chatas for that case. Now let's see the Gemara. So now let's just allergy season. All right, Tvila. So we say by Tvila regarding. So the Mishnah said that the first three items, right, the threads of wool or linen in her hair, right, a woman should not go ahead and can't carry it on Rosh Hashanah. Or can't go on Rosh Hashanah with it, and also cannot, and it becomes a chatzitza when it comes for tefillah. Right, it comes to chatzitza when it comes for being taiva. So Gemara says tefillah, man dekar shema. Tefillah, who's talking about tefillah? This Mishnah is talking about Shabbos. What's shachas? Some Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Amar Rav Bavua, ma tam kamar. Right, the reason is ma tam lo tetzei isha loy bechutei tzemer loy bechutei pishtin. What is the reason why a woman is not allowed to go out with her hair strapped up with strands, let's say, of linen or wool, because during the week, if a woman has to go to the mikvah, so she can't go ahead into the mikvah unless she goes ahead and loosens them. And since during the week she can't go ahead and do tefillah with them until she loosens them, therefore on Shabbos she's not allowed to go ahead and wear them. Why? Dilma de Visrami late Tvila shel mitzvah v'sharlu of asida suni dalat amsters of rabbin. Perhaps she'll have a Tvila shel mitzvah. Perhaps she'll have to go to the mikvah on Shabbos, and since she has to go to the mikvah on Shabbos, so therefore, and she has to loosen them because they're a chatzitza, therefore she might go ahead and come to carry it. So therefore, that's the reason why it's us. So boy mine, Rav Kahana, Rav Kahana asked the question: So tichi chalisa, what about? Right, these other types of strings, right? These strands, right? They're braids of, that are around it. Can those be worn in the hair? So, what's halacha there? So, Amarle Ari Kamarta. You're asking me about woven strands. Kolshu Arig Gazru. Anything that is woven is not. There's no decree. So, since it's woven. Right, and woven, and it's not tightly, and there's as soon as a water table get through, so therefore it's not a chatzitza. If it's not a chatzitza, it wouldn't be usher to go ahead and wear it on Shabbos because there is no reason for the woman to go ahead and loosen it from her hair. And anything that is woven. The Rabbanan were not goys in this case. Some say, and I saw them, my sisters were not makbid, right? They were not makbid not to go out with woven because they would go ahead and they would go to the mikvah even with these woven strands in their hair. So ma'ika bein haklish and avaklish. And what's the difference between the two lashonos of whether they're makbid or he saw that his sisters were makbid? So the tanifin. If it's dirty, in other words, according to the opinion, it holds anything that's just woven. There is no gzeira. So haninami arig. This even if it's dirty and woven, a woman will still be tovelis in it and won't unloosen it. Therefore, be mutter. But however, according to the Mishnah, anything the woman is makbid on. So yes, he saw his sisters were makbid on woven. But however, but since they're dirty, right? She would not want to go. His sisters wouldn't have wanted to go in the mikvah while it was woven and dirty. Why? Because then the dirt will come off from the woven items, and then it will be in the water and attached to her body. So therefore, that according to that opinion, then a dirty something which is dirty and woven would not be permitted, because then if she has to do tefillah shel mitzvah, she would have to go ahead and untie it because she wouldn't want to go ahead and get dirty. So Tan Hasam. So now speaking of mikvah and chatzitza, let's delve a little bit into that inyan. Now these matters are a chatzitza for an adam, for a person. So we saw earlier, so it says over there, strands of wool, linen, and then straps that are on the heads of the banos, of females, of daughters. All right? And Rabbi Yehuda says, Shel semer v'shel seir ein chaitzin mipnei shamayim ein bayim v'hed. No, I disagree with you. Wool, right? Wool and hair There is no chatzitza. All right, so he adds in hair. We'll have to see what the Tanna Kama holds by the hair, but that was something that was new. So hair is not chatzitza, and either is wool according to Rabbi Huda. Now, Amar Rav Huna says Rav Huna v'chulon b'reishi habana shaninu. Those things. Now, the first line of the Tanna Kama was Ve'elu chotzim yadam chutei tzemer chutei pishin v'haratzus shebereishi habanos, and straps that were in the heads of the banos. So now, what were the first two parts talking about? Where it said, right, where it said the strands of wool and the strands of linen. What was he going at, right? So Rav Huna is coming to explain that, right? So Rav Huna says, so what are you coming to exclude? What else would I have thought that the first two lines are talking about? Because the last one said also the straps, the ritzuos that are in the hair, right, and the head. So what else are we talking about? It's not, we're talking about the head, right? So he said, so what are we talking about? What to exclude? Now, if you want to say, okay, maybe there were straps that were worn around the neck, sort of like a necklace, a very tight necklace, and maybe that was something that was done. Now, if you have a tight necklace, now what's the issue? Okay, the issue is this a chatzitza or not? If it's too tight, then it's a chatzitza. If it's loose, right, then water can get through, and it's not a chatzitza. So the question is, remember, this over here is not talking about Hilchos Shabbos. This is over here is a mission over there by mikvos, right? Whether what is a chatzitza or not. So remember, if it's too tight, it's no good. If it's not tight, then it's okay. Now, so if you're saying, in other words, he's saying that Rav Huna's statement was all these are referring to the hair, right? The hair. In other words, the hair is a chatzitza and not the neck, right? So and what material is that? If you're telling me that, say, okay, that you're going to wear wool on the neck. So hashta rach al gabi kasha chaytzes. If you're going to tell me in the reisha that to have wool straps on your hair, right? Now, hair is a hard material, right? Is a chatzitza. Rach al gabi rach miboy. You have to tell me that the soft wool on the soft neck is a chatzitza. Of course, that's going to be a chatzitza, right? Because that's two soft things will connect better than a soft and a hard thing, right? Because the two softs will sort of wrap around each other, as opposed to if you have soft and hard, you only have the soft going on the hard, right? As opposed to they both don't. So obviously that kolshik in that. So the lemute pishtin, rather you can tell me maybe it's referring to linen. So hashta kasha chaytzis. Now you can tell me that the hard linen on the hard hair is a chatzitza. So kasha gabi rach miboy. You have to tell me that the hard linen on the soft neck is a chatzitza. Of course that's a chatzitza. Of course those two will connect better together. So Ella Amar Rav Yosef Hanatam the Rav Huna Lafisha Ein Isha Chaneches as Atzma. Really, it's chiddush like this. It's not the fact that the neck is soft. You're right, the neck is soft, but a person doesn't strangle himself. It won't be too tight. So since it's around their neck, they don't make it too tight. So therefore, if something is around the head, then that's a chatzitza, or the hair, that's a chatzitza, because they're gonna tie it tight. But around the neck, they're not gonna tie it too tight, and therefore, according to Rav Huna, it wouldn't be a chatzitza. So the Mishnah says regarding Shabbos, the dogs can go out with their strings in their ears after they get their ears pierced. They used to, in order for the hole not to close up, they put strings in it. So it says, because they're not going to take it out. So they can go out with the chudash shetzarayim, but they can't go around with the necklaces. Now, wait, why can't they go around? Because they might take them off, right? If you're telling me, now why would a woman take off her necklace? A woman take off her necklace because it's on her neck too tight. But if you're telling me that no one's going to go ahead and strangle themselves, it's not going to be too tight, why can't they go out with these things around their neck? Some Ravina says Ravina, hacha b'mayas kinan, right? This is an interesting one, right? The hacha b'mayas kinan. No, excuse me. There's no hacha b'katla askinan, right? Over here, we're talking about a ktala askina, right? The isha chaynekes es atzma, the nichala shatira kabbalas basar, right? They used to go ahead and want to show that they're from the wealthier class, so they would wear, I guess, things around their neck, which would basically choke their neck and fold over their neck. It would show they're fatter, show that they're heavy, and they say, hey, I'm a wealthy upper class woman because I appear to be fat and well fed. And since a woman, so therefore these things were specifically worn very tight in order to show that their skin folds over and that they're fatter, and therefore that is something that is very tight. And since that is very tight, therefore that specifically would be forbidden to go ahead and wear outside Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, because one might go ahead and take it off and carry it on Shabbos. Fine, 2 dots. So Mishnah, so we said earlier, so on this brisa we said, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shel Semer v'Shel Seir ein chaytzin v'nei shamayim ein ba'ilin. So Tanna Kama said 3 things. Tanna Kama said wool, linen, and the straps are chatzitza when it comes to the hair. Comes in Rabbi Yehuda, and he says wool and hair are not a chatzitza, are mutter. Adds one thing new and argues on one, right? Argues on the wool and says, no, wool is not a chatzitza, it's mutter. And in addition to that, also hair on hair knows if you use other hair to go ahead and let's say, tie up the other hair, that is also not a chatzitza because water can get through between the 2 hairs. Now, Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Halach Rav Yehuda, Halach like Rav Yehuda, B'chutei Seir, when it comes to the hair. So Amar Le Abaye, Halacha Mechal de Pligi. So you're saying the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, as if there's a machlokes when it comes to hair. I didn't see another opinion when it came to hair. So why do you have to say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda if he's the only opinion that's stated the halacha regarding the hair? Maybe you said like this if it was the fact that we heard from the Tanna Kama, maybe you said like this. The Tanna Kama must have also referred to hair, because why is Rabbi Yehuda coming talking about hair, right? You would just say, Mandachar Shema, who's talking about hair, right? But obviously, since he mentioned hair, it must be the Tanna Kama also was referring to hair, saying that's a chatzitza. So maybe no, the Dilma Kshem Kamarlu. Perhaps he said like this, just like, right? Kihechi demoitzili b'chutei sera oidli nami b'chutei tzemer. Maybe saying like, just like you would admit to me when it comes to hair, you'd also admit to me when it comes to wool. So in other words, maybe the Tanna Kama was never talking about hair, and you're saying, hey, we both hold that hair is mutter, so maybe you should say that also wool is mutter. In other words, but the Tanna Kama would hold that the hair is mutter. So Itamar, so what becomes of this? Itamar Amar Rav Nachman or Shmuel, Maidim Chacham Rabbi Yehuda b'chutei seir. Another price that says beferish that the Chamim were Maida that the Chamim were moda when it came to hair, that hair is not a chatzitza, right? That it's mutter. And Tana Mehachis and we learn chutei tzemer chaitzin, chutei serin chaitzin, right? The hair of the strands of wool is a chatzitza, but the strands of hair are not a chatzitza, right? The hair to hold back hair. And Rabbi Yehuda Omer shel tzemer v'shel ser ein chaitzin. Rabbi Yehuda says no, not only hair but even wool is not a chatzitza. And Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says nami to make an inference from the Mishnah. The Tanit says over there, Isha b'chutei ser bein mishla bein mishal chaverta. A woman is allowed to go out with her hair tied up with other hair, whether it's her own hair or other hair, right? Because obviously it's not a chatzitza, and therefore she won't come ahead and loosen it if she has to go to the mikvah. So Mani, whose opinion is this? Elim Rabbi Yehuda. If it's Rabbi Yehuda, filu chutei tzemer nami. Why do you just say you're allowed to go out with hair? You can even say you can go out with wool. Elav, rather not, must be Rabbanan here, must be the opinion of Rabbanan, Shmamina, B'chutei Seir, Lo Pligi Shmamina. Must be that it is the opinion of the Rabbanan, which is the Tanna Kama, and therefore holds that no, that he agrees that when it comes to hair, if you use hair to hold the other hair and to tie your hair together, that other hair is not a chatzitza shmamina. So we see that halacha is held by everybody unanimously, not just Rabbi Yehuda, but even the Tanna Kama, which is the Rabbanan, and they only argue when it comes to wool, whether wool is a chatzitza or not. Fine, so that was mikvos. Now let's go back to our Mishnah. So the Mishnah says, when we're naming, so we had the first 3 items, and we said the reason is because of the tefillah, because she might loosen it to go to the mikvah. Now the next item was mentioned in our Mishnah was v'loi b'totefes, v'loi b'sarvitin. Right? Okay, b'totefes. Now what's that? So my totefes. Rav Yosef chumrasa diktifasa. Right? So he says, right? It's like a little thing that's, I guess, worn around your neck that has like sort of like a kamea, right? A little charm or something that's worn with stuff inside in order to ward off any sort of harm. So the Gemara says, "Amarle Abai," it says, "Havi kamea mumche." The Tishri, I understand. Why do you say it's us? So we have a thing called the kamea, right? We tell you this is amulets. which was worn, that psukim or something made written on parchment, and they can go ahead and wear it out into the public area, because if it's something which is if is known to heal, so therefore it was allowed to go, it wouldn't be removed, and it would be allowed to go ahead and to wear it into public. So why is this not the same? Salam Rav Yehuda Mishmei Abaye Uvzainu. So he says, no, over here we're talking about Uvzainu, right? And so we'll see what that Uvzainu, right? It's also, I guess, it's something made of gold, right? It's made of gold, and therefore it was something that it was worn, I guess, on the woman, as we'll soon see. That so he didn't know. There was argued. He said it wasn't really an amulet. It was something else, which is really golden, which is worn by the woman. So a woman is allowed to go out, right, with something which is golden, right, and something, and the toteves or savitin which were kavua to it. So is it toteves v'ez savitin? What is this toteves and what is this savitin? So toteves hamukefes lami oizen liyoizen, right? Something which goes from ear to ear, I guess, which is worn over the hat, and sort of like a crown or something like that, or whatever they call it. You know, those little right? I don't know, crown, I guess. I don't know. Probably, you know, you have 4 daughters. You know, they all probably, you know, wear like their dress.
You're talking about a tiara.
I have a picture here.
A tiara, yes, a tiara.
A headband goes from ear to ear.
Yeah, like a tiara. So similar to a tiara, which is fixed to the hat. And sarvitin hamegin lo ad lacha. And the other one is, I guess, is also like it goes here, but it hangs down to the cheeks. I guess, you know, by the sides of the head. Also some sort of ornamental, I guess, which is, you know, you still see some around. And Amar Rav Huna, says Rav Huna. So, and how did they wear it? So he said in the back in the day. So he said, "Anios aisinos shalmini tzivos." So I guess the poor ones, everyone had it. The poor ones made theirs out of different colored garments. However, the shiros, the wealthier women, right? They oisinos shalkesav shelza. They would make theirs out of silver and gold. These much fancier, right? There you go. There's a picture of it, right? Much fancier, I guess, ornaments that were worn, or jewelry that were worn. Now the next part, which we'll discuss basically for the rest of the, the rest of the daf, is the kabul. So the Mishnah said, right? Kabul. Going back, the Mishnah said, "V'lo b'kabul." So v'lo b'kabul shus harabim, and not with a kabul to the shus harabim. All right. Now it says over there, b'shus harabim. So now kabul is l'chara like a hat, right? Well, soon like a hat. So, and that this cannot be worn into shus harabim, but as Rashi pointed out, it sounds like it could be worn in the chutzner. There is no flat gezerah all over it. Now, Omer Rabbi Yanai kabul ze'enio de'amahu. I don't know what this kabul is. I kavlo de'avda. Tanan, is this a kavlo de'avda? Right? Is this referring to a kavlo of an eved, which was basically a some sort of sign that was worn by the eved to know who they belonged to? Right, it was something that was they wore to say, you know, they owned by by a certain owner, so others would not, or so people would know who it belonged to. And was this referring to kabel? And that what you said you could wear a kabel was referring to this type of kabel, kabel avda tanan, about kipa shatzemer shepherd dummy, but to go ahead and wear basically a wool hat, right? A woman used to wear a wool hat underneath their hat, some sort of like wool head covering underneath their hat, right? That would be okay, because a woman would be able to take that and would not take that off into the public. Or maybe it means that a woman can't even go out into public with a wool hat. She might, slip it off and carry it while she leaves her hat on, not to uncover hair. The kol shekain, certainly kavod davda, and certainly a kavod davda, this emblem of who the slave belongs to, cannot also be worn out in public. So which one is it? What was it when our Mishnah says below a couple? What was it talking about? Now, so Amar Rabbi Yavo Mistavra Commander Makipa Shotzemer Tanan. It's more logical to say, or like the opinion who held, we're talking about the wool hat that I was talking about. The Tanya Nami we learn Yaitze Isha B'Kabel, right? A woman's allowed to go to the Kabel v'Istam al-Chatzer, or in Istam al-Chatzer. So a woman is allowed to go ahead out into a Kabel with her Kabel into the courtyard, right? And at Istava, And also this istava out into the Korea, which is we will soon see what that is. Not only can she go ahead and wear this couple into the chatzir, she could even wear the Shizarabim. Why? It's a klal of Shimon ben Elazar. So Shimon ben Elazar says, "Kol shu lamata mina shivka yaitze bo. Kol shu lamala mina shivka ein yaitze bo." So he says, no, anything, right, that is basically worn underneath the hat, right? So she can go out of it. Why? Because she's not going to take off her hat in public. So therefore, anything that's worn underneath is okay, and anything on the outside, you cannot. So since it's worn underneath the hat, it would be permitted for her to go ahead and wear it out, even in the Shizarabim. Well, ma istama was istama. Bizyoni. Maybe this is a bizyoni. It's my bizyoni. Amarav kalya pruchi. It's something basically which holds back the hairs in the back of the head. Right, it's like I don't know if it's like a hairnet or something like that, but it's something that holds back. Could be similar to like a hairnet. It holds back the hairs. And Tanar Rabbanan, speaking of which, Gimel Devarim Namar Rabbi Istama, there are three things that they said about Istama. Ein Hamishim Kilayim. There is no kilayim. Kilayim is something, right? You're not allowed to have wool and linen right, sewn together. So these are not sewn. They're not tightly sewn. Therefore, since it's not sewn, it wouldn't constitute shatnez. Veina Matami B'Nagayim, and also would not be Matami Gayim. Cannot become tummy in the guy because of that we know only requires something which is a beged, and these, like we said, is not really sewn together, and therefore it's not considered to be a beged. Then yaitz Rosh Hashanah, also it cannot go to Rosh Hashanah because it would be taken off, right? It would be taken off Rosh Hashanah, and therefore only because you can slip it off from under your hat, and it would be a woman might do it, so therefore you can't go ahead and Rosh Hashanah. And they said the name of Rabbi Shimon, Amru Af Ein Ba Mishum Taras Kalos, right? That has nothing to do with Taras Kalos. In other words, they're geyser after the Churban, not for Kalos not to have everything, certain things. So this was not included. Therefore, they could go ahead and I guess wear those hairnets underneath whatever covering they're wearing. So that was one opinion of Kabul, or Mishnah was talking about Ushmul Amar, and Shmuel says Kavla de'afta Tanan. Just get my allergies. All right, so we say, I'm about to sneeze. So we say, the Kavlo de Avda Tanan, we were talking about the emblem that was made by the owner. The emblem that was made by the owner is not allowed to go ahead and be worn into public, and only be worn into private. Why is that? Let's see. The Shmuel says, right? So it says over here, that he is allowed to go out on Shabbos, right, with it around his neck, and he's not allowed to go on his clothing. So what do you see over here? According to Shmuel, Eved is allowed to go out, right? If he's allowed to wear the emblem from around his neck. So Gemara answers, not a contradiction. Now, okay, so here comes our first distinction. Our first distinction is something which was made by his master. If it was an emblem that was made by his master, so his master wants this to be on him. He doesn't want people to approach him. He wants everyone to know that he belongs to the master. So since he's makbid, if that falls off, he might go ahead and carry it, right? He might go ahead and carry it out and save it. But if it's something that he himself made, so his master didn't care so much. So if his master doesn't care so much, it falls off, right, or it breaks, he's not going to pick up the pieces. He's not going to carry it because his master didn't care, so he doesn't care that much. So therefore, that which you say he can go ahead and wear into the public place is if he made it. Why? Because if it falls off, he's not going to go ahead and come carry it. But if his master made it, that was the one that he's not allowed to wear in public because if it falls off, he knows his master is going to, get him in trouble if he doesn't, come back with it. So the Gemara says, so Maya keep the Lahad Shmuel the Avalei Rabbe, right? So what do you say that by his master, right? That which Shmuel said, his master made b'chais and shevik susa milo. So if that's the case, why can't he go ahead and wear the one, right? He's not going to go ahead and in other words, he's not going to go ahead and take it off, right? He's not going to go ahead and take off the one from his master. So why can't he leave it on his ksus? Amilo dilma misa gamisas mikvale umachis le'akas. So what's going to happen like this? So we said earlier that which he said that he made himself, right? So something that, now I said something a little off before. Let me just go back for a second. That which we say the master went ahead and made it, Okay, so that is something that he's not going to remove. Actually, I said the opposite. I said later in the Gemara. That which the master made is something that he will not remove because his master was the one who put it there in the first place. So he's not going to move that. If he made it himself, he might come move it or whatever it is because no one else cares and he was the one who put it out. So therefore, there's a gzer in that case. So if he's not going to go ahead and move something that his master made, and therefore, if it's around his neck, you can go out in the Rishus Harabim. Okay. So what about the one on his clothing? And the one on his clothing also, he's not going to go ahead and remove it. If he's not going to go ahead and remove it, why can't he wear the Rishus Harabim? So says the Gemara here, perhaps it's going to go ahead and tear off, and he now knows he's going to be in big trouble. So what's he going to do? He's going to go ahead and take his bega, his long coat, because it was on his coat, and throw it over his shoulder. And throw it over his shoulder, basically to cover the area that where his master cut it, where his master covered it. And like Rav Nachum, like Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan, Hayayitzi b'talis mufels menechas ak seifav b'Shabbos chayv chatas. The person goes ahead, and despite the fact that he's wearing his coat, but he goes ahead and he takes the bottom part and he throws it over his shoulder. Since that's not the proper way of wearing his clothing, therefore he would be chai for wearing it. So therefore, we're worried that this will come off, and let's say it'll fall off. And he's going to be embarrassed in front of his master or scared from his master. So he's going to go ahead and fold it over his shoulder, which will constitute carrying. And therefore, we don't want that to happen. So therefore, he can't go ahead and wear it in Rishus Harabim. So v'chiha d'amar le Shmuel Rav China, like that which Shmuel said to Rav China bar Shila, kula rabbanan debei reish galusa, lo livku b'sar b'lei chasime. All of you guys who go out right from the house to the reish galusa, right? You can't go ahead and carry the chaysem, the emblem of the Reish Galusa, the Bar Minach, except for you. Why? Because everybody else is scared of him. If everybody else, their emblem falls off or breaks off, they're going to go ahead and pick up their coat and cover it. Except for you, Rav China bar Shila, why? Delay copied Alecha the Reish Galusa, because you over here, right? They're not so makbid about you. They respect you, and therefore they would go ahead and allow you. To go ahead, they would allow you to go ahead and wear it out without wearing your emblem outside, and therefore be mutzer. So Gufa, Amar Shmuel, Yaitze Eved b'chaysem she'otzara lo b'chaysem she'b'ksuso. So we said earlier, an Eved can go out with a chaysem around his neck because he's not going to go ahead and remove it because it was made by his master, but not a chaysem she'b'ksuso, and not one that's on his clothing because he might go ahead and throw it over. And Tanya Mihachi said, "Learn Yaitza Eved b'chaysem she'b'tzarai, v'le b'chaysem she'b'ksusai." The Bryce that says the exact same thing. An Eved can go out with a chaysem around his neck, but not one on his clothing. I've heard as a kasha. So it says lo yatza Eved b'chaysem she'b'tzaro, v'le b'chaysem she'b'ksuso. We have this brisa, which we're going to bring a couple of the lachos, so we're going to bring that first and ask the kasha. But the kasha is going to be for the first line. It says over there. A slave cannot go out, right, with one around his neck, right? And we just said one can. Now, the early answer is, if you're a couple lines over, you're paying attention, you'd say like this. You'd say, oh, wait, we just made a chiluk before. What's the difference between on the neck? Because if he made it himself, then he'll take it off and carry it, right? If the master made it, he won't remove it. So maybe that could be the pasul teres. Let's see. Let's keep that in mind. Now, anyways, so the Bryce says, you should not go out with the chaysim that is around his neck and also not his clothing. And neither one are makabel tuma, right? These chaysims, these emblems of and also he should not go out with a bell around his neck. But he can go out with a zug, with a bell on his clothing. And both bells, whether around his neck or attached to his clothing, are makabel tuma, and that was by a slave. And an animal should not go out, whether with the emblem around its neck or on its clothing or whatever, like some sort of blanket that covers it, and also not the bell around its neck or bell around its clothing. And neither one is makabel tuma. The bells are never makabel tuma. So it says over there that the bells are never makabel tumah by the animal, and the animal can never go out, right? The animal is very simple, straightforward. There's right. Now, lema. So now we come back to the kasha. The kasha was earlier we said an eved is allowed to go out with the what's it called the chaysim shebek sorrow, and this brisa says he cannot go out with it. So what's so lema hadav. Let's say, Yoel's very smart, right? Yoel says, let's use the same territory we had before. If the master made it, he's not going to go ahead and remove it. And if he himself made it, he'll remove it. And therefore, since he's going to remove it, we don't want it to carry in, which is a rabbin. Perfect teretz, right? However, no. Low, because either he did over the rabbi, right? So it says, so one second, I lost place. Says, look, either he did over the rabbi. No, really, we're both talking about cases where the master made it. The kan b'shel mateches v'sham b'shel tit. And over here, we have to be talking about, really, we'll soon explain why. They're both made by the master. So why is this case aser and the other case motor? Over here, one is talking about one that was metal. And one was talking about the one was that made of clay, right? Now, if it was made, and then Rav Nachman, like Rav Nachman or Rav Hua, why? So dover hamakbid alav rabo ein yaitzin bo. Something which he's makbid about, right? The master is makbid about. He cannot go out with it. Why? Because really, he's not going to take it off, right? He's not going to take it off. He's going to leave it on. That's not a chashash. No, there's no chashash to take it off. Chashash is if it comes off. If it comes off his neck, then what's he going to do? If it's clay, it's going to fall down and break, and the master doesn't really care about it. But if it's made of metal, right? He had them, special ordered a metal and made out of metal to show that this is my slave. So with this emblem, he's going to go ahead and carry it. So even though he's not going to go ahead and take it off, there is a problem of it falling down and him picking it up and bringing it back with him. So there's another reason. There's another reason to aser it, right? So and hachinami is also logical to say why by the fact that we have to say it's ein makabel tuma. Why? I understand now. It makes sense. If you're telling me, over here we're talking about the chaysim made of metal, or we're saying hani hu delo makabel tuma. Only in these cases the chaysim is not makabel tuma. Ha kelim didu. But if it was utensils made of this material, makabel tuma, they would be makabel tuma. Eli amarta b'shel tit. But if you're telling me that this chaysim is made of clay, so tanat. So, that's the case we're talking about. So, hani hu delo makabel tuma, ha kelim didu makabel tuma. So, only these chaysims made of this material are not makabel tuma, but utensils made of this material would be makabel tuma. About time we learn a brisa. Clay avanim, clay galanim, clay adama, and makabel tuma. Lo midivrei Torah, lo midivrei seifrim. We have a brisa that explicitly says any utensils made of stone, made of dung, right? Or made of dirt, right, like teat, right, and makabel tuma are not. They were not being makabel tuma, right? So why would you tell me that if it was already made of, right, adama, if it was made of teat, right, that it's not makabel tuma? I know that. Even if it was a utensil, even if it was a cup, right, a usable cup made of teat, it wouldn't be makabel tuma. Why you got to tell me it's not makabel tuma? Obviously, we're not talking about that. This is talking about something which is metal, and therefore this is metal. Dafka, these are not makabel tuma. Ela shmamina, shamatachas shmamina. Must be that these are not makabel tuma. But if it was a kli, it would be makabel tuma, and therefore something that the master made, if it was made of metal, they still not to go ahead and cannot wear it in public. Why? Because if it drops off, they might go ahead and wear it. And Omar Mar of bezug shavatzara of yaitzehu bezug shavaksuso. Right. So he said over there, he's not allowed to go ahead with a bell around his neck, but he could go out with the bell around his clothing. So zug shevitzaro, so around his neck, so milo, so why not? So dilma misak vasilasuye. Perhaps what's going to happen is it's going to fall off, and he's going to come carry it. So the Gemara says, I zug shevitzaro nami lichush dilma misak vasilasuye. So if it's a bell attached to his clothing and it falls off, he's also going to carry it. So why isn't there a gzer in that case? So the michle mumche. Over here, we're talking about a case of where it was basically sewn onto his clothing. Anything that was woven, right? There is no gzeira. In other words, in this case, since this case was tied into it, right? So therefore, he's not going to go ahead and remove it for any reason, and it should stay on, and therefore, there is no reason to be gozer in such a case. So an animal should not go out with these chesem, right, with this emblem around its neck or around on its clothing, and also it should not go out with a bell around its neck or on its clothing. And both of them, zebazeh, a mekabel tuma, and mekabel tuma, and zug behema, and mekabel tuma. You telling me the zug, right? This bell of a behema is not mekabel tuma, right? We saw this a little bit earlier. I from mean as a kasha, zug shel behema tameya. A bell of an animal is tameya, right? The shell delis, that of a door, right? I guess like a door chime or something like that, which would ring when a person opened the door, attached to the ground. Tahira. That is tahara, because that's considered to be attached to the ground, which is basically anything which is attached to the ground is not makabel tuma. The shell delis. Now, let's say it was made of a door, and then they switched it over, right? They took a bell that was made for doors, which is normally not makabel tuma. They made it for an animal, which is makabel tuma, as we saw earlier, right? So tameya, right? So now that becomes tamei immediately when it comes into use for the animal. However, shel behema, if it was of an animal, it was makabel tuma, also delis, and they made it for a door. Even though they attached it to ladelis, they covered Masara and they nailed it in, Tame, it's still Tame, it's still considered to be the bell that was by the animal, it's makabel tuma, and not. Why? That if you want any utensils that were not, let's say, makabel tuma, but you want it to be used for something that is makabel tuma, all you have to do is think about it. And therefore it is, those are your intentions, and then it is makabel tuma. However, but it can only lose its ability to become tamei from an actual maisa, from an actual action done to this bell. So since you're just taking the bell, right, from the animal and applying it to the door or to the to the door chime, which is normally not makabel tuma, since you do any maisa, you just attached it, you didn't do anything, right? Unless you break it or do something to it, therefore it would still be makabel tuma. Anyways, going back to our point was, we just said earlier the bell of a cow is not makabel tuma, but the first line of this brisa says zug shel behema tameya. It is makabel tuma. So which one is it? So it says loy kasha. Had isla inbo, had deles inbo. One, it has a clapper. One has a clapper. It's a usable kli to make to ring, to shake and ring, and therefore it's makabel tuma. It's a usable utensil which is used to ring, right? And the other one is not. The other one has no clapper, doesn't serve any purpose. Therefore, that's not makabel tuma. So the Gemara says, I understand. Manav shach I manahu afapidelas indol and ilav manahu indol. So he says, if it's a utensil, even if it doesn't have a clapper, and if it's not considered to be a kli, ilav manahu indol must. So he said over there, and if it's not, right? So indol regarding the Mishavi le mana. So will it go ahead, and if it doesn't have a clapper, right? So will that make it a mana? It doesn't make it utensils. In other words, why does the clapper, right? Why is the fact that it has an invo? Why does that change anything? So Gemara says, actually, yes, it does. How do I know that something which is basically a noisemaker made out of metal is tamei? Shenamar, as the pasuk says, kol davar asher yavo beish taviru beish. Right. So it says over there, anything, right, that called davar, right, asher yavo beish, right, taviru beish, anything that goes to the fire, you should put to the fire. So what does it mean? Afilu dibur yavo beish. Even if it's dibur, even if its only point is the way it's a utensil is to be a dibur, right, to make noise, right, that should go into the fire. So you see over there, we're talking about something which makes noise. So Gemara says, so what are you talking about? So in other words, that which we say in our Mishnah, or excuse me, our Brisa, which said that the bell is not makabel tuma. So why was it not makabel tuma? It must be, we just said, because it didn't have this clapper. So I came to the lesle inbo. So what about the next case? Right? It says also not with the bell that was around his neck, but it can go out with the bell on its suso. The zev is zem makabel tuma, and both of them are makabel tuma. So eat the lesla inbal mean makabel tuma. If you're saying it has, right, it doesn't have a clapper, would it be Makabal Tuma? Right? Even as a Makabal Tuma. But I mean, how is the Zag in the Machteshes, or Larisa, Tavos Svarim, Ulmachtafais Tinokas? One who goes ahead and he makes a bell, right, for let's say a cradle, for a crib, right? Like it's for a baby, or for a mortar, right? I guess he used to go ahead and when they make spices, right, they would attach bells to it, or they would use it for, I guess, children's clothing, or for svarim, right? The svarim like we have in our Sifrei Torah, right, like that. So we say over there, yesh them involved tamein. If they have a clapper, then it's tamei. Ein lem involved Torah, right? If they don't have a clapper, then the Torah. And nitalin balehem adayin tumasan aleim. Even if it had it originally and they took away, it's still metame. So this says over here that if it doesn't have a right, if it was not made with an invo, was not made with a clapper, then obviously it's not makabel tuma. So this proves over here it's not makabel tuma. You said earlier if there is no invo, it is makabel tuma. So the Gemara says no, hani mili libatinok. This over here is only by tinok. By tinok, if it was made for a tinok, then it's not makabel tuma. But if it was for a gadol, tachshidhu, then it is a tachshid is considered to be basically some sort of ornament, right? And afagadol even doesn't have an invo, so it's considered to be a tachshid, and therefore, since it's considered to be a tachshid, it would be makabel tuma, and therefore, despite the fact that it didn't have a clapper. So Amar Mars, we said earlier, nitlu in velayim adayin tumas on. So we said if the clapper was taken away from them, they're still settled with the tuma. So my chazi, what are these still fit for? So Amar Abai hoel shahed yait yachalach zero. Since it's a regular person is able to go ahead and reattach it, so therefore it doesn't really lose its status as a kli because you can just reattach it. It's very easy to be reattachable. So Mesiv Rav Zakasha, we saw this earlier, Hazugva in V'chibur. So we said over there that a bell and its clapper are considered to one. It's connected. So v'chitei malchi kama, this is what it means. Afal gadol mechaber kamad mechaber dami. Even though it's not attached, it's like it's attached. V'atai learner brisa mispar shel parakim izem shel ritani. So we said over there by scissors, right? 2 pieces of scissors, or they say a plane of a carpenter. Chibur letuma vein chibur lazo. We said earlier that it is considered attached for tuma. In other words, that if one of them become tameh, then the other part becomes tameh. But it's not considered attached for sprinkling to be matahirit. If you sprinkle on one, the other one is not considered to be sprinkled upon. If I'm reading, we say over there, Madoshach, understand, if it's considered to be one, it's attached to afila hazah. Then if you sprinkle on one, the sprinkling should count for the other one when they're attached. And if it's not considered attached, so even if they're attached, if one part becomes tameh, right, one of the the parts of the scissors, so why isn't the other one? The other one should not become tameh. The Yomer Rabbi, and Rabbi says, so there, davar Torah b'shas melacha, really mean Torah b'shas melacha, chibur bein l'tumah bein l'azah. When it's being used, when they're together, whether it's to be metamayit or whether it's to be matahirit, it's considered attached. Shaloi b'shas melacha, when it's not being used, ein chibur, then it's not considered attached. Loi l'tumah v'loi l'azah, not for tumah and not for sprinkling. And therefore, but they made a gzera in that case. V'gazra al tuma shelo b'shas malacha mishum tuma shi b'shas malacha. So they made a gzera on tuma when it's not being used, even to the time it's being used. So just like when it's being used, if it touches one part of the scissors, all the scissors become tameh. So too, it's not being used. If it touches one part of the scissors, it all becomes tameh. V'hazah, and also for sprinkling, shehi b'shas malacha mishum hazah shelo b'shas malacha. That while it's being used, normally that even if you sprinkle on one side, it does not mitire everything, just like if it's not being used and you sprinkle it on one part, it doesn't all. So therefore, according to this this reason, so what's the reason why it is become what's it called? How do we get onto this? Right. Right. So the question is, we said if it doesn't have its clapper, right, it's still tameh. Right, so I say if it's clapper, it's still tameh. But we see over there that it's not considered to be one. Salamarava hoil the roy lakisha gabe cheres. Since you can go ahead and basically bang it on a cheres and something which is like say another object, it can make noise. So therefore, the bell is still considered to be a functioning item. If it still can be functioning in terms of making noise, that's the reason why, despite it doesn't have a clapper, it's still makabel tuma. And real quick, it's eats barnami. Since you can go ahead and bang it against a cheres, Therefore, it is still considered to be a functional item. And therefore, so we'll stop here. And we got to this. So we're middle of explaining as to why something which is a functional, actually, why was something which a bell which loses clapper is still considered to be a functional kli and makabel tuma. All right, we'll stop here.